those of you who've had ongoing exposure to individuals with that strong narcissistic bent know that these people can be thieves. They can be robbers. And specifically, they rob you of your dignity. You may have an inner sense that says, I want to be a somebody, I want to be treated with dignity and regard. And that narcissist is thinking, not when you're around me. There's only one person who matters, and it's not you. And when you have repeated exposure over and over again with insults and condemnation and judgment, as time goes by, it begins to wear you down. And even if you are normally a relatively confident person, they can take that confidence out of you and step all over it. And one of the things I'm wanting us to examine here today is how you can reclaim your sense of self-respect as you understand several things about this narcissist who's wishing to take that away from you. Now, as we get into this, I want to begin with an illustration. It was several years ago. I was at the grocery store and I had a few items, so I could go into the checkout line to take care of business, And right in front of me in line was this big old burly, hairy-chested kind of a guy, and he was giving the cashier what for? Apparently, he was mad because that store had this card, and if you had the card, then you would get discounts when you checked out, and he didn't have one of them, and so he was very upset with that policy, and so he was just pointing his finger at the cashier and dropping F-bombs on her, and he was talking in a very harsh and mean-spirited tone of voice. And she's just standing there. She's a 40-ish woman, just kind of plain looking and just doing the best she can. She's standing there thinking, what did I do? What's gotten into this fella? And so I'm thinking, well, what am I going to do here? So I swallowed hard and I tapped him on the shoulder. And I said, whatever's going on here and whatever you're attempting to communicate, it's not working. This lady here is doing a really good job of trying to be patient with you. She's not the one that made this policy, by the way, and she's trying her best to be a reasonable person, and you're being terribly unreasonable towards her, and this is just not at all acceptable. I think you just need to kind of take your stuff and move on your way. This is just not right. Well, he then turns his anger on to me. I'm glad he didn't slug me at that place. But he dropped a couple of F-bombs on me and told me that I wasn't exactly the nicest person, except he didn't say it quite that politely. And then as he picked up his stuff, he walked away and gave me the one-finger salute and moved on. Well, there it was then, me and the cashier just standing and looking at each other, thinking, what in the world was all of that? And she began to cry. So I turned my attention to her and I said, ma'am, I am so sorry that this guy spoke to you in such a rude way that made you cry like this. And her comment was, I'm not crying because of what he did. I'm crying because this is the first time that anyone has ever stood up for me publicly and spoken this way on my behalf. So she said, thank you. And I didn't know what to do with that. I mean, it was a really touching moment. Well, then she actually told the kid that was bagging groceries to run over to the freezer department and get me a half gallon of ice cream and gave it to me for free. And I didn't bother to tell her I'm lactose intolerant. And from that point on, by the way, anytime I'd go to the grocery store, when I knew that she was there, I'd go into her lane. And I had a new buddy, and she was there for several years, and I always liked to see her. It really struck me as pitiable that a person like this would feel the need to elevate himself at someone else's expense, and you think, buddy, what are you trying to accomplish? And again, going back, when you've been exposed to people who have this harsh and mean and must be in control kind of an attitude, then I know that you're thinking the same thing. What are you doing? What are you trying to accomplish? You know, in years past, I've been known for doing a lot of anger management work, and I've done seminars and counseling to this effect. And one of the primary things that I emphasize is if you have anger, it's actually possible to manage your anger in a way that still allows other people to maintain their sense of dignity. You can speak anger in a respectful kind of way, and that's a lesson that's completely lost on narcissists. They don't know how to do that at all, and yet if they are ill-prepared to know how to manage things, that doesn't mean that you have to go down into the ditch with them, and that's what I'm wanting to see if we can avert. Now, we go to that question. What in the world is going on inside a person who feels the need to rob someone of their self-respect? Now, the first thing I want to mention on this, and this would come as no shock to any of you, these are damaged people. If you were to look into their personal background, it's a virtual guarantee that you would find that they too have been on the receiving end of lots of insults or criticisms or judgment or conditional acceptance. And they've learned that that respect is not something that just comes very naturally. By the way, another thought that I have is respect doesn't have to be earned. You may not feel respectful towards other individuals, but you can actually be respectful because that's just how you define yourself. And narcissists in their history, it's like, I don't define myself as being a respectable or a respectful person. They just don't understand the concept because they've had exposure to wrong patterns and wrong input. And then in addition to that, when we ask what's going on, we realize pretty quickly the narcissist doesn't see your humanity. They don't see you as being an individual with legitimate needs and with a background and with a family and with a dog at home and all of that. They just see you as being a function in that moment. And they don't particularly care about what the rest of you needs. You're just there to provide a function for them. And when you don't, then here comes all this anger and this hurt that they're sitting on. And you're the recipient of all of the stuff on the inside that they have not come to terms with. Or in addition to that, one of the most common things we see with narcissists, particularly the overt type, but even with covert narcissists, there are times when their impulses can so take over that they just run with raw impulse and they don't think. Keep in mind that narcissists tend to be very low self-aware people anyway, and so when you add poor impulse control, that's not a very good combination. They're unloading their impulses on you very impatiently without thinking about what the ramifications of all this are. And if you break it down and say, let's use a little logic here, it's like, I don't think about logic. All I'm thinking about is what I need in the moment, and so they'll just continue to step all over you. Well, in addition, one of the things that's quite obvious is as they're robbing you of your sense of self-respect, they're trying to build themselves up with an attitude of entitlement. It's kind of like they're saying, hey, do you know who I am? And actually, the answer is kind of obvious. Yeah, you're a struggling, hurt person, aren't you? But in their entitlement, they're thinking, I'm somebody who deserves a whole lot more than what you're giving me right now. And actually, one of the phrases that I think is a very dangerous phrase, and it's a very telling phrase about how healthy or unhealthy a person is that simple phrase, I deserve. Because immediately, once you go into that I deserve mentality, then it's so easy to take it to that next level of entitlement and the condescension that goes along with it. Well, in addition to that, by putting you down, you can see that narcissist who's robbing you of your sense of self-respect is attempting to build up their fragile ego. They're trying to establish superiority. It's not a very good way to do it, but people have been doing it for so many years and decades and centuries and millenniums, building themselves up by tearing someone else down. Not good logic, but that's what's going on. And then in addition, we can say that this is a person who is a hurt little boy or girl who has just simply not come to terms with what their humanity is all about. And certainly they don't know how to speak into your humanity in a very healthy kind of way. So what are we going to do when we encounter these people who have such a poor understanding of the notion of respect and dignity and honor? Well, let's first acknowledge your sense of respectability is not a matter of public opinion. It's not a matter of a vote where other people get to vote and say, okay, today you deserve respect, tomorrow maybe you don't. The narcissist wants to put themselves as being the ultimate arbitrator of that kind of truth, which is not truth at all. But frankly, they're not the ones who holds the keys to truth. I want you to just ask, what do I actually believe about human nature? And one of my beliefs is every single human being deserves dignity. Every single human being deserves honor. And if other individuals don't recognize that, if they don't speak into that, it doesn't make that truth any less true. So keep in mind, these are people who are not the final word on your inner sense of well-being. In addition to that, when the narcissist speaks disrespectfully toward you, you want to make sure that you see that as being the inappropriate way to interact, and don't respond in kind. Many times you're given disrespect, and so you can give disrespect right back. One of the ways that you know you have a good handle on your inner sense of well-being is you can hold on to yours and you feel no need to rob another person of theirs. It takes a lot of self-restraint. Now, the way I put it is it's really easy for me to be respectful when the person in front of me is acting exactly the way I want. But the mark of maturity is when you can maintain respect toward yourself and toward anyone else, even when they're not giving you a good excuse to do so. That's when you know that you've got it. And it's a belief that you want to hold on to that overrides the mood of the moment. And then why don't we just say this? You can't really afford to allow a very hurt and damaged person like this to drag you into their emotional cesspool. And make no mistake, they're in the deep end of the cesspool. And as you see it for what it's worth and for what it is, I'm hoping that you can decide, I'm going to step aside. I'm going to have my own unique beliefs about what I think is wisest and best regarding who I am and how I want to be treated and how I want to treat other individuals. And if you, the narcissist, cannot go along with what I believe, then we're probably not going to have a very tight relationship. Sometimes if the disrespect is so ongoing, you have to remove yourself entirely. And I get that. It's kind of sad when that happens. But I'm hoping that you can anchor down in your core belief, respect, honor, dignity is part of your humanity, and it's a part of the humanity of all people that are surrounding you. Live into that. Don't go into the cesspool. Now, I'm hoping that you gain a benefit by these videos, and if you do, I'd encourage you to go beneath the video and click that subscribe button there. And you'll notice that below the video also I have some links to some books and some online workshops, and I hope that you can avail yourself to that. I really enjoy doing these videos. I hope you know that, and again, I hope that you get some value out of it. And I'm just glad to know that you're a part of our Surviving Narcissism network here and part of our community, and I'll see you next time.